What's going on, everybody? It's your man, Louie T, here with a brand new installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I hope everything is going well for you as we head into the latter stages of the month of June and the very beginning stages of the summer. And man, has it kicked off with a bang, or what, from a weather perspective. God damn, it's going to be hot this summer. And I told my wife probably like 3 months ago, right as we were getting out of the tail end of winter, heading into spring, I said, that was a pretty cold winter. We had snow a bunch. Like, after not having snow for like 3 years or so, we had a bunch of snow this past year. And I was like, if this is any indication of what's to come this summer, this is going to be a hot ass summer. Well, fast forward to present day. I looked at and I'm one of those 7-day forecasts looking out into the future from a weather perspective, want to know, kind of what I'm getting myself into. That's a byproduct of my former life um, as a merchandiser, where I worked outside every day. And so it was very imperative that you knew what the weather was going to be. So I have this habit now of just looking at the weather, 4, 5, 6, 7 days out in advance. And boy, I saw this heat wave coming and I was like, whoa, what the hell? We just literally had 60-degree weather just a week ago, right? All this rain, we couldn't get the sun to come out for its life. It was hot and it was in the witness protection program. Mother Nature must have been after its ass, because we didn't see the sun for about a good week and a half, 2 weeks. It was just rain, 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 rain. And now this is the byproduct. Tons of sun, lots of heat. Wowzers. If you don't have to be outside, don't. Okay. Triple digits. Triple digits. Stay cool out there. If you have to be outside, if your job requires you to be outside, please hydrate properly. It's no joke. Anyway, I digress. We got a lot to discuss. So let's not delay. Let's get straight to the proceedings this evening. You know what it is. You're locked into the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 510th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Lots and lots and lots to get to today. Just going to start off with the NBA Finals real quick, and then there'll be more NBA conversations that we will have as we move on, because this show is going to be all over the place. I'm going to be honest with you. This show is going to be all-encompassing, and that's why the title is Random Acts of the Offseason, because I'm all over the place, right? I'm talking about TV programming. I'm talking about the NBA Finals. I'm talking about KD to the Rockets. Hell, I'm even talking about Fanatics Fest, right? Which looked like it was a weekend full of fun. I'm actually intrigued, and I may want to attend one of these. I may have missed the best one, though. Talk about that here in a second. But before we get to any of that, quarterback 2 and Ironheart and all of these things that I want to discuss tonight, because I'm all over the place. Let's start with the NBA Finals. So it played out after being wrong about how the series was going to play out initially. I was one of those Jay-Zers who thought that the Thunder would win this thing in 5 games, right? Gave the Pacers, and I don't know why I continued to disrespect the Pacers after what they had already displayed throughout the first 3 rounds of the postseason. I don't know why. I hadn't seen enough to give them the just due that they deserved and the respect that they deserved for making it as far as they had and not at least giving them 2 games. I should have at least done that, and I didn't. And, they quickly rectified what was a mistake on my part in game 1 when they won on the road and in the fashion that they did, coming from behind and stealing one. I said, okay, this series is going to be a lot longer than I thought because there was no way Indiana was just going to let OKC waltz into Indiana and win all of those games on the road. So once we saw what the series was at that point, I came back and I think I told you guys, I think it was tied at 2. I said they had their chance to win the series if they wanted to win it. They needed to do so by winning games 3 and 4. They won game 3, and I said all you needed to do was split at home if you're Indiana because you've done the thing that you needed to do, which was take one on the road to give you home court advantage. But even if you don't win both of your home games and the Thunder wrestle it back, you've proven already once again, you did it in this series, that you are fully capable of winning on the road. So it'll turn into the best of 3, who can win 2 out of 3 first. And I trust Indiana to go on the road and steal one if need be. I didn't think they were going to, but I said if there's a team that we've seen in the last 5 to 7 years in the postseason that's capable of going on the road and winning a game that they probably have no business winning, it's the Indiana Pacers. So everything I told you, I said I expect the home teams to win the rest of the games, which meant OKC would win the NBA Finals. And that's what happened, right? OKC won game 5. The Thunder or the Pacers won game 6 convincingly. And then unfortunately, and you're going to hear a lot of this, and I've heard a lot of this already, that had Tyrese Halliburton not gotten injured, that the Pacers would have won or would have had a shot, and we'll never know. Obviously, I like their chances a lot because they hung in for much of they hung in for the entire first half and much of the third before the wheels started to come off in the third quarter. But I was talking to Boss before the game started, and Boss was like, Halliburton has to be aggressive, and he's got to score at least 18 points in this game for them to have a shot. And I chimed in and said, not only does he have to do that, one of the guys on the bench, not named TJ McConnell, because we know what TJ McConnell is all about. Outside of McConnell, I need one of the two in Ben Matherin or Obi Toppin. I need one of them to eclipse 17 points in this game if they are to have a shot. Because I know the starters are going to do their job and their part. At least that's what I thought going into the game, right? And so you get 7 minutes into the game, 6 minutes into the game, and Tyrese Halliburton already has knocked down 3 threes, and he's 3 or 4, and you're like, uh-oh. Uh-oh. It could be one of those nights. And unfortunately for him, he tears his Achilles, ruptures his Achilles 7 minutes into the game. And who would have thought that Tyrese Halliburton in 7 minutes would score 9 points? And that would equal the same amount of points that you would get out of Obi Toppin, Miles Turner, and what's my man's name from Boston? Naismith. Who would have thought that Obi Toppin, Aaron Naismith, and Miles Turner would combine in 75 minutes of play on the floor for 9 points? I didn't see that coming, right? I got what I needed out of Matherin. I said one of them, Obi Toppin, gave you a donut. He gave you an offer, but Matherin stepped up. He had to. He had no choice, obviously with the injury to Halliburton. There's been a lot made of Pascal Siakam and should he have played? He played 37 minutes. Like, yeah, okay, I get it. It's game 7. There is no game 8. And he should have probably played 40 plus minutes, but he played 37 minutes. Not people make it seem like he played 31 minutes in this game. He played 37 minutes, and I get it. He probably should have been out there, but a gassed Pascal Siakam might not have helped you anyway. But I guess you'd rather go down with your guns fully empty, no clips left, than potentially have some bullets left in the chamber. But what happened to them was they just didn't have enough without Tyrese Halliburton. That's what it boiled down to. We felt like if there was any team that could overcome this injury, it's this Pacers team with their depth. But their depth let them down. The starters let them down. And so OKC did what they had done all year long. They relied heavily on their big three of Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, who played well because he's been hit or miss in these postseason, in the finals, but in the postseason in general for me, he's been hit or miss. But he hit, scoring 18 points. Jalen Williams turned in, 20, and then you got 29 from SGA, and then you got the guys contributing, Cason Wallace 10 and Caruso 10 more. And so everybody did their part. Everybody chipped in, did what they needed to do, but their big three stepped up, and it was enough to get it done. Hats off to Oklahoma City. They were the best team in the NBA all year long. And I don't think this is the beginning of a dynasty or anything. This is as wide open, and I've had this conversation with you guys before. This is as wide open of an NBA as we've seen in a while. Anybody could win the finals next year. If you told me the Minnesota Timberwolves won the finals next year, I wouldn't blink. If you told me the Houston Rockets, with the addition of Kevin Durant, won the NBA finals next year, wouldn't bat an eye, right? If you told me the Orlando Magic won the NBA finals next year, there would be a pause. There would be like, wait, what? They did what? But I could see anything happening right now. Anything. The NBA is wide open with the injury to Jason Tatum, this injury to Halliburton. Both of those guys are in question as to whether they play in the 2026 season. Halliburton is definitely not playing next season. Okay. He's definitely out for the entirety of the 2026 season. That's the equivalent of Kevin Durant doing what he did when he was with Golden State in the finals and having to miss the entire next season when he was with the Brooklyn Nets. That's the equivalent of what just transpired with Tyrese Halliburton. So we won't see him in 2026 at all. So the East is wide open, right? The Knicks are going through a little bit of a identity crisis, right? They still don't know who the hell their head coach is going to be. Their search has been just a mess. And so the East is wide open. OKC will be the prohibitive favorite in the West, but the West is still wide open to me. Even though OKC feels like the best team, the West is crazy. And so we'll see what happens. And there's still a lot more to be done in the NBA. Probably prior to the draft, you may see some moves during the draft, and you may even see a few more moves after the draft. Obviously, free agency is still to come, but there isn't a lot in free agency. The most you're probably going to see is more so trades being commenced, and we've seen some of the bigger dominoes drop. I don't think Giannis is going anywhere this offseason. So you probably saw the biggest domino with Kevin Durant. Who would have thought that the Desmond Bane trade would ultimately be the biggest trade of the offseason? But here we are. And we'll see if that holds up as the biggest trade. But, speaking of which, let's go ahead and jump into the gem dropping sessions, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind. Let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up, get you thinking a little bit. So let's stick with the NBA while we're at it and talk about Kevin Durant, who found out that he was traded to the Rockets while he was at Fanatics Fest. Now, he already knew. He was talking to Rachel, not Rachel, gosh, what's home? I can't remember her name, but he was talking to someone, and he had told them he already knew he was traded. He just didn't know when it was going to happen, and he knew where he was going. So it was pretty cool that it happened while he was on stage, and people could react to it in real time. So that was pretty dope. But now the question is, how do the Rockets fit with KD now is the number one guy? Jalen Green shipped off to the Phoenix Suns along with Dylan Brooks and count them, 5 second-round picks. Also, the number 10 overall pick in the 2025 NBA draft, which is about to take place in 3 days from now. The Phoenix Suns now hold the 10th overall selection in that draft as well. So, a solid haul for KD. It's probably right around what people thought they would get. Everybody saw the Desmond Bane trade and felt like, well, if they can get that, then what do you think KD's going to fetch? And that's just not where KD is in his career, and what anyone was going to be willing to give Phoenix. The desperate situation that Phoenix finds themselves in kind of put them in a position where no one was going to overpay for Kevin Durant. They were going to get a nice haul, but it wasn't going to be what the Magic gave up for Desmond Bane, because the Grizzlies didn't have to trade him, right? They could have held on to him. They didn't make it known that Desmond Bane was available. And so if you want him, you're going to have to ante up. So KD in Houston with Sengun and Amen Thompson, Tariq Eason, and that group. Pretty interesting, to say the least. We saw how well they played last year, and they weren't able to make it out of the first round, but a lot of their issues stem from their inability to just score the basketball, especially in half-court sets. You now add in Kevin Durant, one of the most prolific, if not the most prolific scorer in NBA history, to your roster. You want to play fast. Does KD allow you to do that? I don't know. He doesn't hurt you necessarily on the defensive end. They're going to be interesting. They've got one of the better coaches in the league in Ime Udoka. It'll be interesting to see what this does for the Houston Rockets. If this is the move that they needed to kind of fill in the blanks there. If you're the Phoenix Suns on the other end of this trade, you get Jalen Green. I think a lot of people are down on him right now after the postseason performance. You get Dylan Brooks, who gives you a little bit of identity and toughness, something that the Suns lack. So you get a couple of pieces that can help you right now, assuming that neither of them are moved. We've already heard that Jalen Green is a part of the new core in Phoenix. They have to find a way to move Bradley Beal. If they can't, to me, you have too many guys that are right around the same size that don't offer you versatility. They all kind of do the same thing. Right. That's the problem I felt like they had with KD too, which was you had 3 dudes who are all mid-range assassins, but none of them are really prolific necessarily from deep. And they still never had a point guard, and they still don't really have a starting point guard. So, and they still need a big, which is what they're hoping to get, I assume, with the number 10 pick, but we'll see what happens with all of that. But KD to the Rockets, really interesting. We'll see. I'm just glad he didn't end up in San Antonio, to be honest with you. I'm just glad he did not end up in San Antonio, because I thought that's where he's going to end up. And I was like, oh, shit, here we go. Right. Who wanted to see Wemby and Kevin Durant on the same team? Not me. My hand isn't raised. And they already have De'Aaron Fox. I didn't need that. I didn't need that. That's in my division as a Grizzlies fan. They play in the Southwest Division to the Spurs, and they're already a non-playoff team. I don't need another non-playoff team moving up the ranks. At least the Rockets were already the 2 seed last year, so if KD improves them, it doesn't hurt my Grizzlies. They were already, better than us as is. Even though they play in the Southwest Division as well, do the Rockets. So we'll have to see Kevin Durant 4 times a year, but I'm not tripping about that. So we'll see what that trade actually does for them and if it makes them the title contending team that they hope to be. Sticking with the Fanatics Fest, since KD, the announcement was pretty much made while he was on the stage. First of all, I didn't know about Fanatics Fest at all. I missed this last year, assuming that this was the second year, that last year was the first year, is my guess. Didn't know that it existed a year ago. Didn't really know what this was. This year, I'd heard, some people talking about it, but not really knowing. In my mind, I'm just thinking, oh, it's just a card collecting event or something like that. And it was far from that. It, had aspects of that to it, of course, but there were so many big names there. I saw Jay-Z there on night one, and this was a whole weekend event. If you missed it, this thing lasted the entire weekend, if I'm not mistaken, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday. And I saw so many, massive names in the sports and entertainment industry there, from, as I mentioned, Jay-Z, to Joe Burrow, to Jaden Daniels was there. Um, you had LeBron James was there. You had Tom Brady. Um, there were countless others that don't necessarily come to mind right now, but they were in the house. Obviously, Kevin Durant was there, as I mentioned already. And you had so many great discussions, guys on the stage, sharing the stage with one another, having, discussions. Um, Dan Marino was there. Joe Montana was there. And it was, and then a bunch of other guys that might not be like athlete A-listers, but still, like John Starks, for instance, saw him there posing with a few fans and things of that nature. So it seemed like it was a great time. Got to do some competitive things. Um, it looked like it was a good time. It looked like a vibe. So it's something that, and for it to be year 2 of this Fanatics Fest, and it to look like that, I would imagine, and I don't know what happened in year 1 of it, year 2 for it to look like that, if that's any indication of what it's going to be like moving forward, I may have to get out to one of these things. I don't even know where it was. If anybody knows or was in attendance, I'd love to hear about it. But was it in New York? Was it in Vegas? Was it in LA? I'd like to know where it was, but it looked like it was a good time. Looked like it was a really, really good time. So that was interesting. Then there are the cases of a couple of programming updates coming your way here. So I want to start with Ironheart. So I'm not like this massive comic book reader, Marvel, Marvel universe head. I'm not necessarily that guy. Okay. I dibble, I dabble. I have just enough of information to be dangerous. But I just like to be entertained. So many people like to be gatekeepers of, well, they didn't stick to this storyline, or they miscast this, or they did that, or I look, is it good? Is it a good movie? Is it a good show? That's what I care about. So many people get caught up in the particulars. They want to be gatekeepers for the, oh, they didn't stick to the storyline in the comic and this, that, and the third. And I'm like, oh, okay, guy, right? Because I get it. If you're a purist, I get it. But that's not me. I just want to be entertained. And this latest series, Ironheart, debuts tomorrow. It's a 6 episode series. 3 of the episodes are going to be released tomorrow. It's going to be directed by Ryan Coogler. He is as hot as one can get right now, and he has not missed in quite some time, with Black Panther under his belt, and obviously the Sinners just destroyed it at the box office, rave reviews, critically acclaimed. So he's on fire right now. On fire. And he's looking to notch another one under his belt. This time in the series realm. So for those of you unfamiliar, what Ironheart is based off of, character named Riri Williams, who is the protege of Iron Man. I think that from the preview that I watched, which looked absolutely spodioti dopalicious, it looks like it's going to stick relatively close. A couple of tweaks here and there, as we know, but looks like it's going to stay relatively close to what it was in the comics. She super smart, genius, sort of like Tony Stark. She ended up, like, in the comics, she kind of like helps apprehend some guys that broke out of prison using sort of a Tony Stark prototype that she was able to, like, take a little bit and piece of his his costume, so to speak, and kind of build it into something of her own. And he was so impressed with what she did. Basically, he was like, I'm gonna take you under my wing, kind of show you how to take your talents and maximize them. And thus Ironheart was born. And so this is supposed to be some of that. Now, obviously they're going to put, Ryan Coogler is going to put his spin on it and hopefully make it dope. But I'd be lying if I said I wasn't looking forward to seeing what this series has for us. And my guess is they're going to drop the first 3 tomorrow, and then the next 3 will be on a weekly basis. So being that tomorrow is Tuesday, my guess is every Tuesday from here for the next 3 weeks, you'll get another episode of Ironheart, is my guess. I could be wrong about that, but I'll definitely be reporting back to you. Now, how long will it take me to get through it? I guess it all depends on my wife and how much she likes it or doesn't like it, because she'll string me along. If she doesn't love it, but she still wants to watch, this could be a 2-month escapade. If she loves it and she wants to binge it, we'll be done with it as soon as the final episode comes out. So I'm really at her mercy. So we'll find out what's what, and we'll have some discussion about it. So you've got homework, and you don't got shit else to do. It's like Friday, right? You ain't got no sports to watch. You ain't got no job. You ain't got shit to do. So why not watch, right? So that's something that'll be in the rotation of conversations that we'll be having on this podcast. In addition to, and I told you we would be doing this, the next time you see me on this podcast, we'll be picking up our series where we preview all the teams, and every episode of the podcast from here on out to training camp will feature some team in the league, and we'll be kind of giving you a synopsis of what they did last year, some of the moves made this offseason, and what we project them to be going into the 2025 season. So be on the lookout for that. Also, the trailer for Quarterback Season 2 dropped today. Delicioso. That looks like it's going to be epic. And for those of you who are unaware of what quarterback is, Peyton Manning and his Omaha Productions 2 years ago debuted a series that gave you full access, unprecedented access to a select few players throughout the then 2023 season. The camera crews followed them around from basically training camp all the way through the end of that player's season. So you're in the locker room, you're in the facility, you're at their house, you're going to the store with them. In the case of like Kirk Cousins, to the library, wherever, right? It was great access. And in that one, it was Kirk Cousins, Patrick Mahomes, Marcus Mariota, and it was, I feel like there was one more quarterback in there. Had to be, it was, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just those. It felt like it was 4 quarterbacks. It was Mahomes, he won the Super Bowl that year. It was Cousins who made it to the playoffs. They were excellent, had the biggest comeback in NFL history against the Colts that year. They won like 12 or 13 games, but then they got upset in the playoffs against the Giants. And then you had Marcus Mariota, who had a up and down season with the Falcons, and then had the situation where he left the Falcons. Baby was born. He had an injury. I think it was more of a miscommunication, but left the Falcons, and they were like, we don't know where Marcus Mariota went. So it was crazy. And man, I feel like there was one more quarterback on the show that year, but I digress. It was really good. Well worth the watch. But they couldn't find quarterbacks that wanted to do it the following year. So what they ultimately had to do was they pivoted to the receiver position, and they did receiver last year. So it was, Deebo Samuel, and I think the season that I'm referring to, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was, they followed them for the year prior. So the receivers were being followed in the 2023 season. That year, the quarterbacks were followed in the 2022 season. So it was Devontae Adams, it was Deebo Samuel, it was Amon-Ra St. Brown, and George Kittle were the 4 guys that they followed around for receiver. It was really good. And Justin Jefferson, 5, was followed as well. So now they were able to find some quarterbacks that were willing to do it again, which was the genesis of this whole series was supposed to be just following quarterbacks, not necessarily other positions. Maybe they'll go quarterbacks one year, another position, or receivers the next year, and then kind of alternate to give quarterbacks a rest. I don't know. We'll see. But they found 3 quarterbacks that were willing to do it. Cousins was willing to do it again because he switched teams to Atlanta. So, and he was such a hit the first time, I guess they felt like, oh, okay, if he wants to do it, we'll run it back with him. And it was great that they did because he got benched last season. So that's going to be crazy. He had one, like when you watch the preview, you forget so much occurred in the season for Kirk Cousins. Had the crazy come from behind victory against Tampa on the Thursday night where he threw for over 500 yards. He had the ridiculous comeback against the Eagles in week 2. They were, people forget, the Falcons were leading that division and looked like the clear-cut favorite to win that division probably 8-9 weeks in. And then the wheels fell off. Cousins, I don't know if he got hurt or what, but he just became a shell of himself. He started, and he's a big confidence guy, lost all of his confidence, started making mistakes, turning the ball over like crazy. And they eventually went to the rookie Michael Penix Jr. for the final 3 weeks of the season. So that's going to be interesting. You're going to hear from Kirk's perspective on how he was surprised and blindsided by the pick of Michael Penix. You see a little bit of that in the preview if you haven't watched it to get you excited about it. Joe Burrow also going to be featured in this season 2 of quarterback. Obviously, we saw what kind of season he had. One of the best quarterback seasons we've seen without the team making the postseason. He was phenomenal. And in any other year, he's in the MVP discussion because they missed out on the postseason. It did not happen. But we're going to hear from him, obviously, and all of the things that they went through. And if you watch the in-season Hard Knocks, you got a little bit of that, but this is going to be on a much larger scale because it starts from the beginning and gets you all the way to the finish line instead of like the in-season Hard Knocks starting in December and then getting you to the finish line. So Burrow's going to be pretty fascinating because they got off to a slow start and they kind of had a tumultuous season, up and down, twists and turns. And then Jared Goff is going to be really fascinating to watch, I think, on this thing because he was essentially discarded. He was an afterthought. In that Matthew Stafford deal, I know I was disrespectful. I can't speak for any of you out there. I was disrespectful towards Jared Goff. He felt like a throw-in, right? Like, hey, we'll give you a couple extra first-round picks if you just take Jared Goff off our hands. Like, we want Stafford, but we also don't want Jared Goff. So here's an extra first-round pick just so you can take him off our hands. And I remember Brad Holmes, who had just left LA to go to Detroit to become their general manager, saying that he's no throw-in in this deal. I believe in Jared Goff. And I was like, yeah, right, whatever. Of course you're supposed to say that. He'll be holding the fort down while you guys lose for the next 3 years, and you'll draft some guy to take his spot. Poor Jared Goff. That was my thought process. And when they drafted Hendon Hooker, I was like, there it is. They're going to develop Hendon Hooker, and he's going to take Jared Goff's spot in a couple of years. Well, I was wrong. And Goff was a guy that they truly believed in. He's resurrected his career. And last year was awesome for Jared Goff. He played really well. But, you know, as a Commanders fan, I'm going to be all over the ending of that season because I know Jared Goff and the rest of that Lions team and organization did not see the Commanders coming the way that they ultimately did into their house and destroying them and leaving the Lions season in the wake of their destruction. And so it's a very abbreviated finish to a season. It reminded me of like Kirk Cousins on quarterback the first year where he had this remarkable season. It's this kind of fairy tale season for the Vikings. Everything's going right. And then they get to the playoffs and it's one and done. It's an abrupt end. And you're just like, what the hell just happened? And that's what happened to the Lions, right? Tremendous season. You get to week 18. Winner takes all, number one seed, division, all of it. Loser goes to like the 5th seed. And they end up winning that game, getting to 15 wins, 16, whatever the number was. I think it was 15 wins. And the first overall seed in the NFC get the number one bye, and then number one seed in the bye, and then they lose in divisional round in their first game. So that's going to be a crazy finish to that. So should be fun. That trailer was awesome. If you haven't checked it out, absolutely do so. It's going to get you excited. I think it drops because you can binge that. That's not like a weekly thing. I think it drops on July 8th, if I'm not mistaken. And usually it's 8 episodes, I believe. 8 episodes. They're usually about an hour long a piece, roughly, give or take a few minutes on either side. So just prepare yourself for that as that's coming down the pipeline as well. So that's the gym dropping session. All right. As we transition to our next segment of the show and social media maneuvers, I'm a midnight marauder. Y'all know what it is. If you're out there, you're in the comment section, you want your comments read on the air, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. If it is pertinent and time permits, we will try to get to your comment. Otherwise, if you want to ensure that your comment is read without any question, use the super chat function. If you're a member, you have the ability to use your membership as a way to comment as well. So use all of the resources that you have available And if you want to jump straight to the front of the line and ensure that your comment is not only shown on the screen, but read and reacted to, use the super chat function at your fingertips. So with that said, we're going to kick off the social media maneuvers segment of the show with Travis Hunter signing his rookie contract. And Jacksonville did a pretty cool thing where they sent out 2 tweets, right? 2 messages that Travis Hunter had signed. We signed wide receiver Travis Hunter to his rookie deal. Then they sent out another one. We signed defensive back Travis Hunter to a rookie deal. So that was pretty dope. And Travis Hunter, I was wondering, like, okay, what's his angle here? Because he was one of 3 guys that had not signed their first round contracts yet. It was him. Denver had not signed and still has not signed their rookie cornerback from Texas. And then obviously Shamar Stewart has not signed his rookie deal. And my assumption is that the corner from Texas and Shamar Stewart are probably having some of the same issues with the language, right? That's anytime you see a player not sign his rookie contract in the first round, it's all about language. It's never about money because the deals are slotted. You know exactly how much money you're going to make. That's not really up for debate. Until I saw Travis Hunter's deal, where I said, and it wasn't about the amount because he got the amount that it was just how much of it was guaranteed up front. That was like wowzers. I think he signed like a 40-something million deal, which is standard for the number 2 pick in the draft. But the 30 million that he got guaranteed, fully guaranteed, because as we know with most of these draft picks that go in the first round and especially in the top 10, there's so much of their guarantees tied into, or so much of their contract, I should say, is tied into that 5th year, that option that the team has to pick up, which is why a lot of teams don't pick it up if the player hasn't exhibited qualities that lend itself to them feeling like this is a guy we can keep long term, or at least we want to explore another year to see if he can finally break through. They just decline because it's so expensive. You know, if you've drafted the 5th pick in the draft and he's been okay, but he hasn't been worthy of the 5th pick, are you really willing to give him fully guaranteed $18-19 million in the final year of his rookie contract? The answer is no a lot of the time. So a lot of times when these guys sign these deals, yeah, you're the 2nd pick and yeah, you're getting $40 million over, 5 years, 4 really, but only 20 of it is fully guaranteed right now, right? 25. He had $30 million. Let me see if I can track down the details of his deal, which incredible. When I saw the numbers, I was like, whoa. Travis Hunter contract. Let's see. 4 years. I think it's 4 years. And $46 million. 4 years, $46.65 million. The deal includes fully guaranteed signing bonus of $30.57 million. I've never seen a guy with the new CBA in place, right? Not this CBA, but the one before that was the one where in 2011, I believe, was the one where they had the rookie scale, because you had guys like Sam Bradford coming into the league and being the highest paid player, in the league, or the highest paid quarterback. And dudes were like, wait, what are we doing here? Like, Sam Bradford, seriously? Like, we can't be doing this. So that rookie scale came. I've never seen a rookie get $30 million up front, ever. Number 1 pick, number 2 pick, none of that. The deal includes a fully guaranteed signing bonus of $30.57 million, which was paid up front. That's upfront money. As he put pen to paper, he got $30.5 million, which was makes Hunter the highest it makes Hunter the first non-quarterback drafted outside of the first overall pick to receive his entire signing bonus up front. So maybe this is a practice that's done to quarterbacks, but if you don't go number 1 overall, if you're not the quarterback, this just doesn't happen. So shout out to him for holding out, not necessarily holding out, but waiting this whole process out and getting his money up front in that capacity. You never know what's going to happen. And so to get your money like that up front, pretty dope, I must say. So now it's just 2 players who haven't signed their first round rookie contracts. And Jahdae Barron of the Denver Broncos, and obviously Shamar Stewart. We've talked about that, and those 2 are at a stalemate. So, and my guess is Jahdae Barron has some sort of offset language or some kind of, situation similar to Shamar Stewart, and his just isn't as publicized because he hasn't held out. He showed up and he's participated, assuming that everything will get done, and it probably will. So we haven't heard as much about his, but he hasn't signed his either. So it's a pretty big deal. Only difference is, as I mentioned, he's probably been at all of the off-season activities. He's been at the mandatory mini, so nobody was really paying attention. But, all's well that ends well. And if the contract gets signed before training camp, nobody cares, right? So we'll see what happens. But let's get to the comment section, see what you guys have to say. And let's go to the comment section and get to my guy, Juan Gotti, talking sports. What up, Juan? Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Juan writes, what up, Lou? What's up, Juan? The summer series is a hit. I love it. Can you answer this for me? Is Purdy and JD5's arm on the same level? Excuse me. First of all, really appreciate the love and support for the summer series. When I first came up with the concept, I knew it had a chance to be something that was just not only beneficial for you guys, but beneficial for me to step out of my comfort zone, because I don't generally do a ton of guests. So it's been a revelation for me on a personal level, and it's also been great to see you guys support it. So I really appreciate the love and the support for the summer series, and can't wait to see some of the other guests. Can't wait for you guys to see some of the other guests that I'm going to have on the program and some of the conversations that we are going to have. Brock Purdy's arm is nowhere near as strong as Jaden Daniels. So yeah, that's there's a big discrepancy. Purdy has one of the lesser arms, I would say, in the NFL. He doesn't have the RPMs on his football that some of the guys that can truly spin it have in the league. Again, Purdy's game is really based upon timing and rhythm, anticipation. I'm not telling you that he's got a Chad Pennington arm, but Brock Purdy can't sling it. There's a reason why Brock Purdy fell to the absolute final pick in the 2022 NFL draft at the quarterback position. If you have talent, like arm talent, and someone believes in you, you'll get taken. I mean, I think you need to look no further than this year, right? This past year's draft, the Saints taking Tyler Shuck in the second round. Why? Because he's got traits. The man's like 80 years old already, but it doesn't matter. Had injuries and things that it didn't matter because he can sling it. He's an athlete. He's got size, like he's 6'5", ran a 4.6 40, and he's got a big time arm. And so those are all traits that, a quarterback's coach, offensive coordinator, guys that feel like, hey, I can get the most out of a guy with some tools, want to work with. Purdy has none of that. None of it, including his arm. And so, their arms aren't on the same level at all. Like we saw Jaden flick of the wrist last season, throw it 60 air yards. 55 air yards on a number of occasions. The Terry catch against Cleveland was insane. It was ridiculous, right? Um, Obviously the Hail Mary, he had to heave that one pretty far. Like Brock Purdy, I remember watching him in the NFC Championship game a couple of years ago against Green Bay, um, and then against Detroit. And there were some opportunities for some deep balls in that game, in both of those games, rather. Especially, I want to say it was the Lions one where they botched an interception and it ended up being caught by Brandon Ayuk. He couldn't get it out there. His arm wasn't strong enough to get it out there. He just doesn't have the RPMs on his footballs. So, no, their arms are not on the same level at all. Juan Gotti talking sports. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. Who writes? My homie is saying solely arm talent, they are on the same level, and every throw 5 can make, Brock can too. I got told I don't watch ball, but what says you? Yeah, your homie is probably a 49ers fan first and foremost, and he's capping because every throw that Jaden can make, Brock Purdy can't make too. Like, when have you ever seen Brock Purdy getting ear hold and throwing the ball on the money the way that Jaden did to Terry against Cincinnati? When have you ever seen Brock Purdy do that? Again, I can't think of many instances where Brock Purdy's unleashed a ball 50 to 55 air yards down the field in stride where a guy didn't have to wait on it and, try to make a play on it because it didn't have the ability to travel the distance it needed to stop that guy from breaking his stride. I've never seen him do that before. Not on a pass 45, 50, 55 yards down the field. Yeah, I've seen him do it 25, 30, 35 yards. Any NFL quarterback can do that. And you don't have to have the biggest arm. We've had these discussions before, but to say that he and Jaden Daniels' arms are the same is preposterous, right? We've watched Brock Purdy throw a football many times, and it's not on that level of a Jaden Daniels. And I'm not telling you that Jaden Daniels has the strongest arm in the NFL because he doesn't. But there's levels. Brock Purdy's towards the bottom of the NFL in terms of arm strength. I'd put him in the same category and boat with Tua Tagovailoa. Their arms aren't very strong. So, no, Brock Purdy doesn't have a arm the likes of a Jaden Daniels. That's crazy talk. John Perez, my guy, JP. Thank you for being a member for 16 months. My guy, JP, writes, Lou, good to see you, as always. Likewise, JP, really appreciate you, my guy. Says, been trying to go to Fanatics Fest since last year, but could never get tickets in time. Also, what do you think about the Eagles O-line basically calling the Dolphins culture soft? So when do those tickets go on sale for Fanatics Fest? Like, I didn't know it was such a big thing. I didn't realize that they, obviously you have to have tickets to get into something like that. You can't just let the masses in. It'd be pure anarchy. So I get it. I just didn't. I had like, how much does a ticket cost? Like, when do they go on sale? Do you have to pre-order? Like, is it that big of a deal? Clearly, you said you've been trying to go and you can't get in. Tickets have been sold out. So clearly it's a thing. I wonder how much like a ticket for, like, and I'm assuming they probably have single day tickets, full weekend tickets, that sort of thing. I guess I got some homework to do because I had no idea Fanatics Fest was this big of a deal. And in seeing all of the clips on social media, I'm like, hey, that actually doesn't look like a bad time. I still don't know where this thing is. Feels like something they would throw in a major US city like New York, LA, Vegas. I don't think it was in Florida. Doesn't feel like a Florida thing. This feels like a New York or LA thing. So, and just off of the optics, I'd tell you it's New York. off the optics of looking at it with Jay-Z being there, not that he can't fly out to New York or LA, but feels like off the optics of the situation, it feels like a New York thing. But also, I saw what you posted on X about the ex-Dolphins offensive lineman talking about the Dolphins culture. I mean, I really don't have anything like to add to that. Like that's his experience in Miami. Clearly, he felt a type of way about his time in Miami, and now that he's in Philadelphia, look, we could do this with a number of guys who have had bad experiences with their former teams. They go somewhere where it feels like a professional outfit. Obviously, he's going to the Super Bowl defending champions in the Philadelphia Eagles. And so he's like, oh, this is what a real NFL outfit is supposed to look like. This is how a real NFL operation is ran. And then he proceeded to dump on the Dolphins like guys aren't coming to meetings late, guys aren't toxic, guys are sticking around, 10, 15 minutes afterwards and talking about personal situations and all of that stuff. And he basically, like you said, shitted on the Dolphins organization. And again, his experience wasn't good there. So that's how he feels. And we've seen other guys talk about their previous locations in an unfavorable light and say, well, this is how it's supposed to be at their new, spot. And I literally had a conversation about that with um someone. I want to say either it was the next guest on the summer series or someone else or that same guest, but it was off camera. We had a conversation about it. So, but that's a real thing. You know, I remember when the new regime came in 2024 with the Commanders. I very vividly remember Antonio Gibson couldn't wait to get the hell out of here. And as soon as he did, he got to New England and he was like, yo, this shit is way better than where I came from. That shit was ass, et cetera, et cetera. And then they proceeded to win, 3 games, 4 games, whatever that number was. We go on to the NFC Championship game, and it's totally different. And the culture within that building was totally different than what guys had experienced. And so I get it. You know, you go from Miami, which might not have been the best place from a culture standpoint. We remember that's the same organization that had the debacle with um, their head coach at the time, who's the defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings, and him talking about the owner, Stephen Ross of the Dolphins, not wanting to win, trying to get them to tank. And like we've seen foolishness with the Dolphins in the past. We don't know what's true, what's not true, right? Could have just been a scorned coach trying to dump on an organization that just canned him. But he could have also been talking. I mean, that I know that case went to court and it was thrown out. So maybe he didn't have enough evidence, whatever the case may be. But that Dolphins organization has never been elevated as a beacon of light of success in the NFL. So I'm not surprised that was said about them, but it doesn't move me any, honestly. It doesn't really move me. So, let's get to the comment section real quick and knock down a couple of these. Let's see. Sheree says Prime Julio Megatron AB fits. One gotta go. I would take so Fitz would be the one that would go for me. Love Larry Fitzgerald. Excellent hands, probably the best hands of that whole group. But the physical gifts of Julio and Megatron, his doesn't stack up to them. And AB, when he was at his best, probably the hardest receiver in the league to stop. So I would take those three over Fitz. Like, Fitz was really good. Fitz was never a 4-4 dude. You know, and not that that's what's important. That's not the only trait you need to have, but physical gifts wise, Julio and Megatron scare you to death, unlike most wide receivers. Like, those Randy Moss type guys with the frame of 6'4", 6'5". But in the case of Megatron and Julio, you're talking about 6'5", probably 220, 225, 230. Megatron was 230 for sure. Julio was probably 220, no doubt, right? At 6'4". And Megatron's 6'5", 235 or something like that. 230, 235. Like, these were freaks you're talking about. You throw Andre Johnson in that mix, and you're talking about some of the freakiest dudes at the receiver position from a height, weight, speed perspective that we've seen quite possibly ever at the receiver position. Like, they don't make them like that. So AB was a little different in his stature, but just a dominant receiver, almost impossible to cover, and a guy that put up some monster numbers. When he was locked in Pittsburgh with Big Ben, almost an impossible cover. So I could easily swap those two out and go with Fitz. If I want more size, if I want a guy that I can rely on a little bit more, that's not as combustible, I would probably just go with Fitz. But give me AB, Megatron, heavens to Megatron. Haven't said that in a long time. And Julio. Sheree says, current Josh Allen or prime Big Ben. That's easy for me. I'm current Josh Allen, without question. I don't even have to think about that. John Wynn, no, I didn't see any shooting. I actually haven't taken in any of the coverage because I didn't care. After they won the finals, good for them. I moved on. Right. So I haven't seen anything of that. But, it's not surprising because it seems like every time we have some sort of a parade or some sort of celebration for a team winning that had never won, or just, it doesn't matter if they've won or not, something crazy happens because people can't get together in large crowds without something stupid happening. So I'm not shocked by that. Samuel says, I feel so bad for Holly. Everybody does, man. I mean, this is why NBA players, when they have an injury like that, don't push through and continue to play. They sit out for a month and a half before they come back, because a sore calf is a precursor to something going wrong. Because you got to remember, with the human body, how it works is when something isn't working properly, things around it are affected. So unless you just directly got kicked in your calf and your calf starts hurting and it's sore, if something didn't physically happen to the calf where you can point to it and say, that's the moment my calf started to get sore. I went up for a rebound, I came down, and, somebody kicked me in my calf. If it's just getting sore, that means something has gone amiss around the calf that's led it to be sore. And it was his Achilles. It was his Achilles. So that's unfortunate, man. Ghost Rider says, did you see what they named the draft room? They named it after Bobby Beathard. I love it. Like I said, this organization, this new iteration, they haven't missed yet. They haven't missed. They are blindfolded, and they just continue to hit the mark with the darts every time, right? They don't see, they just pick up a dart and they throw it and it hits the board somewhere. And a lot of times it's close to the bullseye. They don't miss. And this was another situation where they honored Bobby Beathard's memory and his legacy and what he meant to the organization, dedicated it to him and his family. His wife was there when they did it. They posted the pictures. It was dope. It's everything that we've come to know and love about this organization. They get it. Jay Reyes says the Fanatics Fest is in New York City. Felt like it watching the clips of it and seeing like the ambiance. It felt like a New York thing. It didn't feel like an LA thing, but like I said, it felt big city-ish. So it could have been LA, felt like New York, but could have been one of those two. It felt like one of those two. Um, so yeah. All right. So that's the last comment that's addressed to me. Now let's go ahead and mosey our way to our final segment of the show. And of course, that is garbage time. So the way that this offseason has gone in the NFL, it's crazy because when I had my most recent guest on the summer series, Craig Hoffman, on, he said, "Name me a player that changed teams that has a chance to have a bigger impact, that is the best player that's switching a team that's better than Laramie Tunsil." And I had to stop and think when he said it. And before I could even, respond, it was not it was a rhetorical question for him. He's like, "You can't." And so I was like, "Well, I'm going to think about it." And he's right. Like, there was no major quarterback shuffling going on this offseason like we had seen the previous 3-4 off seasons, where you see major changes at the quarterback position, where you're like, "Hey man, Russell Wilson going to the Broncos, or Matthew Stafford going to the Rams, or Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets, or something of that ilk. Kirk Cousins last year going from Minnesota, coming off the season he had come off of, to the from the Vikings to the Falcons, and you're like, oh shit, look out for the Atlanta Falcons, right? There was none of that this offseason. Sam Darnold was the bell of the ball at the quarterback position. Daniel Jones went to the Indianapolis Colts, and Aaron Rodgers to the Steelers, and Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston to the Giants. There were no notable quarterback, changes. And so if Sam Darnold is the best quarterback to change teams, then you got nothing. So Geno Smith I would argue Geno Smith is probably better than Sam Darnold. I trust Geno Smith more than I trust Sam Darnold. I'll tell you that damn much. And him going to the Raiders. But I thought about it and I'm like, he's right. The trading of for Laramie Tunsil is the biggest deal that we've seen happen this offseason. And so when you think about the NFL, you think about the landscape of the league, you think about the two conferences. I'd look at what was done this offseason, how teams improved, what teams got better. The NFL feels, we talk about parity all the time. And we talk about anybody has a shot, but do they really? Right? I mean, let's talk about who's been to the Super Bowl, like each of the last 5 years. Let's just do that. So right now, Patrick Mahomes picked up the torch and the mantle from Tom Brady, and now he's running the play in the AFC. You want to go to the Super Bowl in the AFC, you got to go through Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. And it feels like it's only a handful of teams that if you're able to somehow slay the Chiefs, which there's only been one team capable of doing that, it feels like, and that's the Cincinnati Bengals. If you're going to slay the Chiefs in the postseason, it's going to be the Bengals, the Ravens, or the Bills. That feels like the only three teams that have a legitimate shot. Nobody else in the AFC feel like it. I don't feel like CJ Stroud is going to beat the Chiefs or any of the other teams I just mentioned for that matter. We'll see, right? He's only had a chance to play against the Browns in his rookie season, and then last year, the Chargers. So we'll see what happens if he comes up, because every time he's come up against one of those types of teams in the postseason, the Ravens his rookie season and the Chiefs his second season, he's lost. Now, you could argue about some of the calls in that game in the playoffs and wild divisional round weekend this past year, but it is what it is, right? They didn't get it done. Feels like the same four teams have a shot. Same three teams. You add Burrow and the Bengals if they make it in there, and that's four. Coincidentally enough, those are your top four quarterbacks in the league. So I don't think that's a coincidence. NFC, much more wide open, but the Eagles have the best roster in the league, and that's why they find themselves in that mix. And then the 49ers were also one of the better rosters in the league. And before last year, they found themselves in the NFC Championship game in 19, 21, 22, and 23. So 4 out of 5 years, they were in the NFC Championship game and made it to the Super Bowl twice in that span, in 19 and in 2023. So the Eagles made it to the Super Bowl each of the 2 out of the last 3 years. So we sit here and we talk about parity in the NFL and this, that, and the third, but until we get new teams participating in the biggest games, there's really not as much parity as we try to make it out to be. Like, it was cool to see. I think that's why so many people gravitated to the Commanders, because they were fresh blood in the championship game. It was unexpected. They came out of nowhere. They were a great story. But I think on a much larger scale, it was just good to see somebody else other than San Francisco and Philadelphia, right, in the NFC Championship game. And Philadelphia was still there, obviously, but it was a new participant. It wasn't Detroit, right? Felt like it was going to be Detroit. It wasn't Green Bay, like they had been there with Aaron Rodgers. Like it wasn't Tampa Bay, like they had had a run there with Brady. And then even with Baker Mayfield taking over, they went to the divisional round, if you recall, in Baker Mayfield's first season. And so it was somebody different. Could that be, something that transpires this year? And if so, who's that team? Could some team come out of nowhere in the it just feels like the AFC is just too much over there for anything to happen that's not supposed to. In the NFC, anything can happen because there is no dominant team outside of Philadelphia. And we even question, like, how can the Eagles continue to keep this up with all of the changes that seem to go on with that organization from a coordinator standpoint almost every year? Can they continue to keep this up? I don't think they had a more talented roster than last year's roster in this whole run that they've had. That 24 roster for the Eagles was as talented as we've seen in the NFL in quite some time. There was no weakness on that roster. If your biggest weakness is your quarterback on that roster, you're sitting pretty. And you could argue that was their biggest weakness. They really didn't have any. And even when he needed to, he was able to produce. So I don't think they're that this year, by the way. I think they have clear, holes on. I was like, please don't, even though he can't seem to stay healthy, I didn't want Jair Alexander in Philadelphia. They that's the one position. I think their entire secondary is a question mark, to be honest with you. They've got question marks in the secondary. The last time they didn't have C.D. Johnson, their defense wasn't the same. They lost their edge. We'll see if history repeats itself. They went from one of the best defenses in the league, or at least a solid one, to one of the worst defenses, pass defense wise, to then again the best defense, like one of the best defenses in the league last year, to what this year? We'll see. But I said all that to say this. We talk about parity in the NFL. Because of the one game nature, it doesn't take a series to be won to advance. That makes it a lot more likely that upsets transpire. But when you look at the NFL, when you take a step back, there is still an element of the haves and the have-nots. And in the NBA and in Major League Baseball, usually you need rosters and maybe a star or two. In the NFL, you just need the quarterback. You just need the quarterback. Obviously the rest of the roster can't be ass. Or one side of the football can't be ass, as we saw with Cincinnati last year. But I mean, the Commanders roster wasn't heralded and wasn't loaded with a bunch of all pros and pro bowlers. I mean, it wasn't a great roster. Look how far they made it. You could talk about luck, you could talk about this, you could talk about that, but the facts are what they are. You got one of them ones at quarterback, you got a shot. And so, could someone unearth a gem at quarterback this year? We saw a number of teams draft quarterbacks. Did anybody hit a home run? Is any of those year two quarterbacks that were from what we think is going to go down as the greatest quarterback first round, maybe greatest quarterback draft in NFL history? It has a chance to. Got off to a great start last year. Could one of those year two quarterbacks take a massive step forward? We'll see. But I just go back to my original point. If you're going to be in the conversation for winning a Super Bowl, you better have a quarterback that strikes fear into the opposition's heart. If you don't, then everything else around him has to be damn near perfect. And it is so hard in this league to win consistently and win the big game when you don't have a roster that is built to sustain itself around a quarterback that needs help. So that is it for yours truly here on the 510th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I look forward to joining you guys down the road on the podcast. If you're a Commanders fan, we'll be live tomorrow night for the Command Post. And for those of you wondering what's going on, if you're a Commanders fan, once again, what's going on with the Commanders Kings, schedule conflicts, a couple of things have come up with, a couple of members of the Commanders Kings. And look, frankly, we're in the dead heat of the offseason. Like, this is that period that if you're going to get away, if you've got things to do, now's the time to do it. So, we haven't been able to just get everybody synced up because this is that time. Guys are, taking breaks and going on vacation and doing things with their family, and this is the time to do it. So we'll be back eventually in the very near future. But this is definitely that time of the year. You know what it is. So I'll be trying to put out some content tomorrow. We have a couple of things we got to get to this week. Louie's lurking in the comments. We got to do our recap of the last episode of the summer series, among other topics. So all of that'll be out this week. Obviously, we got the command post tomorrow night, and a slew of other things that'll be coming at you throughout the course of the week. So just stay tuned to the Louie T Network as I'll continue to do my best to try to entertain you in this downtime as we trudge through the monotonous, quiet period of the NFL. So until next time, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. You guys take care. Have a good one. God bless. And good night. Peace.